Hello and welcome back. In this section, we're going to talk about testing with low traffic. So a lot of people still want to test even when they're not supposed to. And a lot of these people could likely be your boss who has been reading a lot of CRO blogs and thinks that testing's the end-all be-all. Or it could be your client who says they want testing services. As prescriptive as we get, some people just want to do things. And so I want to give you some safer ways to run tests on places that you probably shouldn't or with lower traffic. So the first tip I have for you is to use microconversions as indicators. So remember when I was talking about the minimum number of conversions you need per day for two variations? Here's that chart again, just broken into without 3, 4, and 5. So we know we're probably going to go a long way here. So we're looking probably around the 4-week territory, which will be about 8 conversions a day, so 16 conversions total. So say you can't get that from a revenue perspective. You're not going to get that from a unique sales perspective. You might be able to get that from the conversion before that, like from the click to that page. So you might get that from the add to cart to the cart page where then they convert. And so you can start using those micro conversions as actual indicators if you're measuring all 3 things or all the actual metrics. So I was saying 3 things. I have a distinct example I'm about to show you. This is not an exact science clearly because I've talked about how higher top funnel metrics don't entail bottom funnel metric lifts. But if you're measuring the top funnel and the bottom funnel ones and you're seeing a consistency between normalization, then you can actually start making some assumptions. Okay, so here's an example of a test we were running on a funnel that we don't send a lot of traffic to. So we were measuring, signed up for the lead magnet, added the execution plan to the cart, and then the actual purchases. And so this is the conversion data from just the purchase, the EP. And notice we only have about 35 on one variation converted and 29 on the other one converted. And there's no statistically significant data here, but it has normalized. Things haven't changed in quite a while on this page. And so I wanted to look at the other micro conversions as indicators to see if there was a trend going on. So now let's go up to the execution plan to the cart. Now in this case, we still have 71 conversions to 63, still no real clear data or clear win right here, but again, there's normalization. So now here's the one that's the most interesting and where I was comfortable with calling this test as a null. I'm saying nobody won this test at all. And what happened here was at the top level where we had over 1,008 conversions of downloading a lead magnet, giving their information, and 985, there's still no statistically conclusive data here. So I was able to just call the test at that point. I knew it's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. It doesn't matter what we do on the page because this test exactly was for all caps versus no caps in our copy. And the hypothesis was that we thought that people were being dissuaded by using all caps all the time because we always do use all caps on our landing pages, and we tried using an initial style, kind of more just like prosy type approach. And we found that they actually didn't care at all about that. And so rather than kind of pushing this test into perpetuity or waiting to call this test until there was 100 conversions from the EP sales, we used the micro conversions as the indicator to say, you know what, this is going nowhere, now we can call this. So that's how you can use micro conversions with your lower kind of more in-depth conversions, your purchase stuff, to tell you if you're in the right on calling a test. So keep that in mind. So another thing you could try out is lowering your confidence threshold. And when you lower your confidence threshold, this is actually going to increase the room for error. So you're sacrificing accuracy for the state of testing. But I'll show you what you'll gain from this and what you can potentially lose. Okay, so here's an example of a split test, of a potential test that could occur, where it's a 20% lift at a 95% confidence rate. The required sample size for this is 7,682 people. If you don't think you have enough people there to run that off, because a 20% lift is great, and that's probably around average or what you should expect, so you shouldn't be estimating much more than that in this case. So 7,682. Maybe you just don't have that traffic for the time period and you're not going to be able to get there. So you could try this. Reduce the confidence rate, to 95% to 90%. So that means there's a 10% chance that the documented change is due to randomness and not your actual, the changes that you put there. That means there's a possibility that there's a false positive that's occurred. But that also decreased the required sample size by 21%, which isn't that bad, especially if you are a low traffic site. That cuts things down significantly. You went down to just over 6,000 people that you need versus over 7,500. So that's a sizable drop there. But it does really sacrifice accuracy for speed or accuracy for sample size. And if you're okay with the 90% threshold, which actually some agencies even are, you can use that. I don't like to drop that low. I'll do between like 90 above. It needs to be like 91 and above. I don't know why, I just don't like to stay around 90, but just the increased possibility of a type 1 error is kind of a major bummer. But one thing to keep in mind though is if you think about the 95% confidence rate, that means 1 in 20 tests is going to be due to randomness, that 5% threshold. This just now turns it into 1 in 10. Okay, so just keep those things in mind when you reduce this. Make sure when you write up your actual analysis and in your reporting that you note confidence rate, and then even in the title you say this was like increased error in kind of brackets. There's an increased error that could occur here, so that if someone notices in a funnel that, hey, we're not converting like we used to, and they see this in one of your campaigns, they go, oh, well, that might be the case, and that's kind of their new area to start evaluating again. So it's just doing you a favor in the future and also doing your colleagues a favor in the future. So the last thing that you can try out is sequential testing, and this is really the last possible thing, and if I'd rather you not do it, but sometimes, I've seen big organizations who still use this, and I don't understand. But sequential testing, as I talked about earlier, is when you have one variation during one time period and another variation during another time period. But that doesn't account for time. And I think I've beaten this one to death, so I won't push into that much more. But this is useful for low traffic sites because they get the full samples. They get their full sample size rather than splitting it in an asynchronous test where you're going, okay, so I have 5,000 people, now it's 2,500, 2,500, now it's 5,000 people hitting a full variation over that period of time. So just be really careful if you do this. Make sure you note that again in your testing reports. And ideally, I'd rather you not, but again, I totally understand. We're pragmatists here. Optimizers must be pragmatic. But one thing I kind of want you to remember, and then I want to end on a note of something that you can just tell clients or bosses if they're really pushing you to do some of this kind of corner cutting, which would be, remember, split testing is not optimization. It's not. It's an optimization tool. I think I showed you guys this exact slide earlier on where there's CRO right there, and there's, this isn't an exhaustive list, but these are all the different things you can do to optimize. And look, split testing is only right there down in the middle. It's only a part of it. And here's what I want you to tell bosses or clients, and you probably know this now after doing all this work with me throughout this entire course, which is split testing can actually hurt when done incorrectly. You can get bad data, and maybe the examples that you think are actually going to make you a lot of money, they won't. They don't scale out. So split test when appropriately, but always be optimizing. And that's actually the end of this entire course. So I hope you really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I'm excited to hear what you guys come up with. And so thank you very much for being with me, and good luck on the test.